Good evening and welcome to Calm Sleepy Tales, where tonight we tell the tale of Cinderella after the ball, a tale of life, love and forgiveness. We all know how the fairy tale ends. The glass slipper fits, the prince and Cinderella marry, and they live happily ever after. But what comes after the ball? What does happily ever after really look like? In today's story, we'll step beyond the final page and into the daily life of Cinderella as a princess, a wife, and a mother. We'll discover how she navigates love and duty, how her relationships with her stepmother and stepsisters evolve, and whether the wounds of the past can truly heal. And we'll see how the memory of her father still shapes her heart today. So, find a cozy spot, settle in, and let's begin this gentle tale of life after the fairy tale, where happily ever after becomes every day. When the glass slipper fit Cinderella's foot, the world sighed with joy. A girl of kindness, so long mistreated, had found love, a home, and her rightful place beside Prince Charming. But fairy tales often end too soon. Life, as any wise soul will tell you, is not a single dance or a fleeting moment of magic. It is a story that unfolds each day. And this is what happened next. Now, 3 years have passed since the grand wedding. Cinderella, no longer the cinder-covered girl by the hearth, is Her Royal Highness, Princess Ella of the Southern Kingdom. But most still called her by her old name with affection, and she smiled when they did. The palace was bright and open. Glass windows gleamed in the morning sun, and sprawling gardens filled the air with lavender and rose. On a typical day, Cinderella rose early, a habit from her old life that never left her. By dawn, she would slip out of the grand bedchamber, careful not to wake her husband, and visit the nursery next door. For now, there was only one small cradle there, and in it a daughter, little Isabel, not yet 2 years old, with curls of gold and a laugh like chimes. Cinderella loved these quiet moments, rocking Isabel, humming old songs her own mother had sung to her. The mornings soon became busy. A light breakfast with Charming, he was still Henry to her in private, then meetings with the council, or walks through the village to meet with people. Cinderella believed a princess should not forget those who lived beyond the palace walls. Though Henry had been raised to rule, he admired Cinderella's way of listening, her understanding of hardship. And in truth, she helped him rule better than he ever might have alone. But life, even blessed, was not without its shadows. The question often asked in whispers, what became of her stepmother and stepsisters? Cinderella had seen them again, not long after the wedding. The Queen Mother had urged a reconciliation, for in the kingdom, forgiveness was a virtue greatly prized. The first meeting was uneasy. Lady Tremaine, the stepmother, arrived stiff and proud, dressed in mourning black, though no one had died. Anastasia and Drizella followed, uncertain and pale. At first they spoke little, but over months, and with the gentle patience Cinderella had always known, the walls began to crack. Why had they been cruel? Lady Tremaine finally confessed during one tearful evening. After the death of Cinderella's father, grief turned to bitterness. She had resented her stepdaughter's goodness because it reminded her of her own failings. Her marriage to Cinderella's father had not been one of love, but of survival. With his passing, her fears consumed her. Anastasia, always the softer of the two sisters, wept openly and begged forgiveness. Drizella remained more guarded, her pride a shield, though over time even she began to thaw. They were not changed overnight, but now they visited the palace occasionally, welcomed not as villains of the past, but as family striving to become better. Lady Tremaine had retired to a small estate outside the city, where she spent her days in quiet reflection and the care of her late husband's beloved roses. And what of Cinderella's father? In truth, her father had loved her deeply, but had been blind to the suffering under his own roof. A gentle merchant, he had travelled often and returned to a home where sorrow lived in every corner. But in the world of this tale, not all endings are final. After her marriage, Cinderella learned that her father had left behind letters hidden beneath loose floorboards in her childhood room. Words of love, regret, and hope for her happiness. These letters reached her heart as nothing else could, and from them she resolved to let the past be healed, not buried. Though her father was gone, his memory lived on through her. And now she told Isabel stories of the kind grandfather she would have known, planting a rose bush in the palace gardens for him, a rose for every letter read. Henry, Her prince had grown much since the day of the slipper. At first, he had loved the girl of the story, the mysterious figure at the ball. But now, he loved the woman who ruled beside him. Wise, kind, sometimes fierce when defending the voiceless. They governed together in a way rare for the realm. Cinderella taught Henry that compassion must temper law, and Henry showed her how courage could shape a kingdom. Their court became known as one of fairness, where peasants might speak without fear, and women's voices were heard alongside men's. Isabel grew strong and happy. In this world her parents shaped. Her laughter often echoed through the marble halls, a sound that servants secretly called the kingdom's true treasure. And what of Anastasia and Drizella? Time softened them in different ways. Anastasia found love, not with a prince, but with a humble bookbinder named Thomas, whose kindness saw beyond her past. Their wedding was small, but Cinderella attended, placing a simple flower crown upon her sister's head. It was a moment of tears and healing. Drizella's path was longer and lonelier. She struggled with envy and regret, but began to find her way through service, teaching music to village children. Her sharp tongue softened, and though marriage did not come swiftly, she gained the respect of those around her. In time, both sisters became beloved aunts to little Isabel, and the palace rang with new laughter during their visits. Not long after Isabel was born, on a morning thick with spring blossoms, Cinderella wandered alone into the palace gardens. Sleep had been scarce. Little Isabel was teething, and Cinderella sought a moment of quiet beneath the old cherry trees. As she settled on a bench, lost in thought, a familiar warmth swept through the air. The petals trembled as though stirred by a breeze that hadn't come. "I wondered when you might call me again," came a voice, gentle and bright. Cinderella looked up. There stood her fairy godmother, as radiant as the day they had first met. No grand ball gown or pumpkin carriage this time, just simple robes of soft grey, eyes sparkling with timeless kindness. "You've done well, child," the godmother said, sitting beside her. "The magic you've built here is greater than any I could conjure." "I still think of you often," Cinderella whispered, especially now raising a child of my own. Will you stay?" The godmother smiled, touched her hand. "My place is to help those who have no one else to turn to. Right now, others need me more than you do. And besides," she leaned in, eyes twinkling, "you have all the magic you need here." They spoke a while longer of love, forgiveness, and the quiet courage it takes to shape a life. Before leaving, the fairy godmother knelt beside Isabel's cradle and softly touched the child's brow. "May your heart be as open as your mother's," she whispered. With that, she rose. A swirl of light, a faint shimmer in the morning air, and she was gone. From that day forward, Cinderella no longer waited for magic to find her. She understood now. Kindness, patience, and love were the strongest spells of all. Still, in the quiet moments, when a butterfly lingered too long, or a star twinkled just so, she would smile and think, perhaps she is watching still. And so, with the lessons of magic and motherhood both close to her heart, Cinderella returned to her days, not of grand enchantments, but of the quiet, everyday wonders that shaped her life. Does Cinderella's life sound charmed? In many ways it was. Yet it was also life, full of joy and sorrow, work and rest, love and loss. She missed her mother terribly and often spoke to the stars at night, asking if she watched from above. She missed her father too, but found comfort in his words and the garden they tended for him. And on quiet days, when rain tapped at the windows, she would sit by the hearth, not out of duty, but from choice, cradling Isabel and humming old melodies. For, though her world had changed, her heart remained the same. Now, if you visit the Southern Kingdom, you may still see a princess walking among her people, a little girl skipping beside her. You might see two sisters, once thought vain, helping children in the market square. You might pass an old lady in a garden of roses, head bowed in memory and forgiveness. And if you listen closely, you might hear the princess say, "Happily ever after is not an ending. It is every day we choose love over hate, hope over regret, kindness over bitterness." And with that, The story continues.